In my last Splatoon history video, we went over the Rapid Blasters. Rapids were pretty outclassed in the first game, became much better in the second game mostly due to kit design, and now sit in a very comfortable spot in the third game. The main reasons for Rapid being good in 2 when all the other blasters were bad is mostly due to them having the best and most relevant strengths of all the blasters, as well as having good kit design. Well, what if there was a weapon that pretty much always has relevant strengths and great kits? What about a weapon that, because of how much potential it has many high-level placements and has seen a lot of use from some of the best players in the world? Well, this hypothetical weapon does exist, and it's called the Slosher. In this video, we will take a look at the history of the bucket, its kits, its patches, its presence throughout the games, and what has kept it so strong for almost 8 years. This is the history of Splatoon's Slosher. First of all, we need to go over what a Slosher actually is. The Slosher is essentially a bucket of paint which you lob at the opponent. There are 5 different variations of Sloshers which all have their own unique things that make them stand out, but this video will only go over the history of the first Slosher. This attack, which I will be referring to as a slosh from now on, thanks to my community tab, can be thrown at different angles, meaning it can go over ledges, barriers, and cover, which is the staple strength of the weapon and what most people know it for. The slosh itself has 2 different hitboxes, the glob of ink at the end of the slosh, which deals 70 damage, and the trail that follows it, which deals 50 damage. Sloshers can also flick their shots and make the hitbox longer, meaning they can hit 2 people with 1 slosh using a well-timed flick. This is unique to the normal Slosher and helps a lot in bad situations such as 1v2s or attacks from behind. Sloshers can paint well overall, but because the slosh's trail of ink is so thin, it can be a struggle to paint your feet sometimes. Also, Slosher can only fire every half a second, but the damage usually makes up for that, which is why this weapon is great for comboing with its kit and its teammates' attacks, making it fit into most team comps pretty easily. Slosher is one of the weapons people consider needing a great deal of skill to get good at. Whereas Splatoon players like to hate on Slosher for being pretty brainless, its older brother requires a full understanding of the weapon, its kit, its matchups, and more to really be effective. Because Slosher has such slow fire rate and the slosh can be tough to hit consistently, not hitting your shots in a close range encounter is almost certain death. So because of this, your value as a player in general is heavily reliant on not having a skill issue every fight you take. When you can hit your shots though, you become one of the scariest main weapons in the entire game, and this skill barrier is part of the reason that we don't see nearly as many sloshers in high level play as opposed to other weapons that are more consistent and easier to be effective with. Well, now that you have a good understanding of the Slosher itself, let's take a look at how it was in the first game, Splatoon. When Sloshers were initially released, they were actually pretty underpowered. The main weapon itself attacked around 20% slower than it does today, and it also had pretty bad movement penalty after sloshing. Despite the main weapon being pretty slow, it would actually still see a lot of use because of its kit. A theme you'll see throughout this video is that Slosher tends to get kits that work incredibly well with the weapon, which is one of the big reasons that it has stayed so strong all this time. Vanilla Slosher in Splatoon 1 had Burst Bomb and Ink Strike, which, for someone that doesn't remember Splatoon 1 all that well, saying that out loud is absolutely wild. While Ink Strike isn't exactly the perfect special for Slosher, Burst Bomb is definitely the perfect sub, which is exactly the reason why this is likely the best kit we'll ever get for Slosher. With a little bit of damage up abilities on your gear, Slosher can combo its slosh damage with even the very outside of the burst bomb radius, leading to an incredibly fast and versatile kill option. This weapon is often considered one of the best weapons in the entire game, entirely because of how sloshers are with burst bomb. The Slosher is insanely good, and like I said, probably the best kit we'll ever get for it. But what about the other Sloshers? I'll go ahead and talk about them, sure, but because Vanilla Slosher is so insanely good, the other 2 variants, being Slosher Deco and Soda Slosher, didn't see nearly as much use solely because of the main and sub synergy of the first kit. Slosher Deco comes with Splat Wall and Kraken, and despite having the best special in the game, the weapon is really held back by Splash Wall. Slosher really likes having a sub weapon that it can combo with, like Burst Bomb from earlier, and the Splash Ball just doesn't fit the weapon. Take Ken's 52 Gal from Splatoon 2. It has Splash Wall and Booyah Bomb, which honestly does a similar job to what Slosher Deco from Splatoon 1 would like to do, but because Sloshers fire slowly, are pretty ink heavy, and don't paint nearly as well as 52 does, Slosher Deco ends up being pretty bad at its job. It's still usable, sure, but Slosher likes having a bomb so much that it really hurts the weapon to give it something like Splash Wall or Sprinkler, which we'll see on a later kit. Lastly from Splatoon 1, we have the Soda Slosher with Splat Bomb and Inkzuka, which is a massive improvement from Slosher Deco. Splat Bomb is famously great for Slosher because it's a fast-acting bomb that can still kill as well as being able to combo sort of like Burst Bomb. It's nowhere near as good as Burst Bomb on Slosher, sure, but the Splat Bomb is probably the second best thing it can get, and likely the best sub we'll ever see on a Slosher after Splatoon 1. It also has Inkzuka, which is just a great special in general, acting as a fast and long-range kill option, greatly increasing Soda's kill power. Unfortunately, the potential of Inkzuka has been worsened due to it being the only 220p special weapon in the entire game, and Soda Slosher definitely doesn't have an easy time charging a special that expensive. While it isn't vanilla Slosher, it's still a great pick. There's just not really a reason to run it over Slosher at this point. I should mention that Slosher's got nothing but buffs in this game due to how lackluster the main weapon was at first. In 2.0.0, the damage that Sloshers did to the Rainmaker shield was increased by about a third, which is great because one of the only things vanilla Slosher had some trouble with was popping the Rainmaker shield due to its fire rate. In update 2.7.0, the Sloshers would all receive a buff from 50% special depletion to 40%, which wasn't all too helpful for the vanilla Slosher, but helped the other two variants out a lot, especially the Soda Slosher, which had Inkzuka, the only 220p weapon in the entire game. The main weapon would receive buffs as well, reducing the time needed to use Slosh attack by about 20%, and reducing movement bouncy after firing by about 26%. Overall, Sloshers were pretty good at the end of Splatoon 1's lifespan, but as the meta developed, the game became much more focused on one-shot damage. Blasters and Sloshers are both high-damage Slayer weapons, but because Blasters can direct hit and use its blast radius much more effectively, the existence of Blasters, specifically Custom Range Blaster and Luna Blaster Neo, in the first game somewhat invalidates the use of most Sloshers. All of them except of course Vanilla Slosher, which had the incredibly fast burst bomb kill. Overall, Slosher and Soda Slosher were really the only two weapons in their class that ever saw use, because they filled the same role and had a similar playstyle. One of them was just significantly better at its job than the other. Well, it's time to move on to Splatoon 2. I was honestly surprised by the amount of information I could find on Slosher in Splatoon 1, but I guess it makes sense when you're looking for info on a top tier weapon instead of a low tier like I did last video. Anyways, let's talk about Sloshers in Splatoon 2. Remember when I said that the existence of blasters invalidated the use for most Sloshers in Splatoon 1? Well, now blasters kinda suck, so it's pretty much the other way around. The introduction of ink armor hurt blasters a lot, and Sloshers honestly aren't terrible against it, allowing for the main weapon to actually be used over blasters. They also suffered a lot of nerfs going into Splatoon 2, whereas Sloshers basically got a slap on the wrist, suffering from a slight nerf to the weapon's movement speed when firing. Long story short, Sloshers now took the role as the high damage killer-oriented weapon, whereas blasters would stay pretty obsolete, except for a few rare cases. The first Slosher kit we would see in Splatoon 2 would release the same day that the game itself did. Slosher had Suction Bomb and Tenna Missiles, which needless to say is one of the best kits released at the time, and still holds up as a top tier weapon of Splatoon 2 today. The Slosher had a good sub for it in Suction Bomb, allowing for it to poke really well, hold off space, deal lots of damage, and of course combo with the main weapon. Tenna Missiles is very strong on this weapon, exactly why they would nerf Slosher to 190p literally 5 days after the game came out. A few months later, this change would be reverted, but it shows just how strong the special was on such a strong fighting weapon. This vanilla Slosher kit was great for almost every mode, and because of this it became very easy to fit into team comps, even easier than before. LDE Suction Bombs became very strong on Splat Zones after that LDE buff. Both the bombs and missiles were exceptionally strong on Tower Control and Clam Blitz, and it did struggle a little bit on Rainmaker, as the slower bomb is not usually favored, but since Suction Bomb did much more damage in 2 than it does now, it still worked very well. Of course, Slosher would be overshadowed by the beast that is Tri-Slosher, but it still did very well in its own right, especially after the Tri-Slosher nerfs. Because Tri was so powerful, people began to realize Vanilla Slosher as the more supportive of the weapon types, which actually gave it a healthy niche that is still seen today. While Vanilla Slosher didn't quite live up to its predecessor, it would still be an incredibly strong weapon that still saw lots of use. It didn't quite have the insane fighting capabilities of Slosher from Splatoon 1 or Tri-Slosher from Splatoon 2, but instead a more supportive role, which is great for the weapon's kit variety. Next on the list is Slosher Deco, equipped with Sprinkler and Baller. This weapon also used to be a top tier due to its great baller output, but over the course of the game's lifespan, this weapon would receive not 1, but 2 points for special nerfs. In 2.3.0, the baller would go from 190p to 200p, and in 3.0.0, it would go straight to 220p, which basically killed the potential the weapon had. Nintendo must really dislike Slosher Deco, as throughout the games, it has consistently had the worst kit of the normal Sloshers. The points for special would be brought back down to 210p, but only at the very last balance patch of the game. Slosher Deco had a really good baller output at a time when baller was very good to spam, and it unfortunately suffered the same fate as a few other baller weapons, being over-nerfed to the point of unviability. Also, the over-nerfing of Sprinkler basically makes the weapon feel like it doesn't even have a kit, which was already bad enough considering the weapon didn't have a bomb. There's not much else to say about Slosher Deco, it could have been so much better than it is.
This weapon sucks, man! God damn!
Lastly, we have my personal favorite of the Slosher kits so far, being Soda Slosher. Nintendo knew that they haven't given Slosher players a taste of the pure aggression playstyle since Vanilla Slosher in Splatoon 1, and decided to give him a kit that they wanted. Soda Slosher has Splat Bomb and Burst Bomb Launcher, which is an insane kit for Slosher in this game. Splat Bomb is the best sub we'll ever get on Sloshers because Nintendo won't give us Burst Bomb again, but they still kinda gave Slosher Burst Bomb in the form of its special. The bomb launchers are remodeled versions of the bomb rushes from Splatoon 1, and for the most part, they're significantly better. Soda was given a 210p Burst Bomb launcher, which is a very fair number for such a strong special on the weapon, and it helps Soda become one of the most powerful Slayer weapons in the entire game. Unlike the bomb rushes from Splatoon 1, the bomb launchers have extra throwing range, making bomb launcher burst bombs even stronger for their poking potential and ability to paint areas very quickly. Plus, Soda already had a Splat Bomb, so even when it doesn't have burst bombs, it still has a very strong sub-weapon that it can combo off of and poke with. Soda became possibly the most aggressive Slosher we've seen so far, and while still not being at the same level as Slosher from Splatoon 1, it was still very, very strong. The stronger weapon between the Slosher with missiles and Soda is still pretty unclear, but it's safe to say that both of them are very, very good weapons. Both being able to fit into team comps, fill their role well, and deal with the meta well, but the only thing they really struggled against in a team dynamic is fighting a team with a lot of paint control, which makes sense considered the main weapon struggled with painting. Overall, introducing Soda was not only great for the weapon, but for the variety of Sloshers as a whole, and now we had 3 different normal Sloshers that all saw use and had unique strengths, which is really awesome to see. So yeah, Splatoon 2 was a great time for the Sloshers, and it was the game that I first started to play them in. I love all 3 Sloshers, and I love that they all see use, although V-Bucket and Soda are much more popular than Deco, and I think this game will likely be the best for Sloshers in terms of kit design. Vanilla having a supportive loadout, which the Sloshers never really seen before, while still being one of the strongest fighters in the game. Deco having a pretty unique kit that became much worse at the end of the game's lifespan, but still sees use in some rare cases. And Soda being one of the strongest pure Slayer weapons of all time across the 3 games, shows that Nintendo did a pretty amazing job making these kits, and the Slosher players who used these were obviously pretty happy with them. Overall, I really like Sloshers in this game, and I'm excited for what the future of the weapon class has in store. Now it's time to talk about Sloshers in Splatoon 3. Splatoon 3 rolled out a little over 6 months ago, and the Sloshers are still as strong as ever, if not stronger due to the removal of ink armor from the game. So far, they've received no changes besides a visual bug fix, and the first kit that we received is, needless to say, powerful. Slosher in Splatoon 3 comes with Splat Bomb and Triple Ink Strike. I've already talked enough about Splat Bomb, but Triple Ink Strike was originally a point of contention. On release, the special was pretty bad, but when patch 2.0.0 rolled out, Triple Ink Strike would receive 2 massive buffs, the damage radius increasing by about 10% and the damage dealt increasing by about 50%, meaning this special went from extremely underused to one of the best and most versatile in the game. Despite Slosher having immense potential after this update, Nintendo would drop the 10 attack Splatter Shot, which literally just cloned the Slosher's kit onto a weapon that could paint better and get more Triple Ink Strikes off. Not to mention that Slosher was already overshadowed by the Sloshing Machine prior to this update, and then they nerfed Sloshing Machine at the same time they released T-Tech, meaning that Slosher hasn't really gotten its chance to shine yet. Don't get me wrong, Slosher is still very powerful, it's just that there have consistently been better options to fill a similar role so far. While Slosher is still very strong and is also considered a top tier at this point, Nintendo would continue their mistreatment of Slosher Deco by giving it Line Marker and Zipcaster. This kit is terrible. The idea that the developers had for this kit was likely that the main weapon would be able to combo its damage with the sub-weapon, but they failed to account for the fact that Line Marker is probably the worst sub-weapon in the game, maybe the worst in all of Splatoon's history. It's hard to hit, it barely paints, it costs too much ink for the trade-off to be worthy, and it's not even much better than just sloshing twice. Zipcaster doesn't exactly help this problem as it doesn't paint well either, and Slosher fires so slowly that it struggles to do anything with Zipcaster. Overall, this weapon is among some of the worst in the game right now, but with a few buffs I could see it being used more. It does have the problem of being severely outclassed, as why would you use Slosher Deco when you have Splatana Stamper, which does its job way better than it, deals damage more consistently, and also is a burst bomb? Why would you use Slosher Deco over even Octobrush, a very strong weapon in its own right, and also can actually use Zipcaster effectively, as well as having Suction Bomb? It really just doesn't serve any use, and the only thing that really holds it up is the fact that it's a Slosher, and that's about it. And yeah, that's pretty much it for Splatoon 3 so far. Sloshers in Splatoon 3 have been pretty strong yet unremarkable, and because of the existence of T-Tech and Neo Splash, Slosher sees almost no use at all. We don't have the Soda Slosher kit or any previews for it, but my hopes aren't exactly high considering they already gave us the Splat Bomb kit in Vanilla Slosher. I doubt it'll get missiles again, although it's reasonable to expect Suction Bomb or Torpedo, but sadly I don't think we'll see another set of Sloshers that complement each other like Vanilla and Soda did in Splatoon 2. Well, that's the end of this video. I'm sorry it took me longer than expected to get this out, but I've been pretty caught up with other things outside of Splatoon, and trust me, I'd spend all my time making videos for you guys if I could, but life gets in the way sometimes, you know? Also, I really appreciate the insane support on the last history video. It makes me really happy that there are people who want to see more of the stuff that I make, and the fact that almost 300 people have clicked the subscribe button because they liked my videos so far is insane to me, and also extremely motivating. I love reading the positive comments you guys gave me on the last video, and it really makes me want to continue doing this YouTube thing, so thank you all so much. I really appreciate the support, and will continue to make more videos like these for you all. Alright, that's about it. See you later.